everyone, it's Diana.
Hi, I'm Nick.
And we are Team RCIA. It's Tuesday, all things RCIA with Team RCIA. And here in the United States, nothing big is happening today.
Nothing at all.
No. But in the United States, one thing that we do often hear about are in our RCIA teams, how most of the people in our RCIA processes are already baptized. And so what do we do?
Yeah, so that it seems normal if you live here and you're participating in parish, and that's just the way we've always done things, but it's not quite normal in the vision of the rite, because the rite of Christian initiation for adults is about initiation into Christ. It's about baptism. So if folks are already baptized and we're doing stuff to them, rites that are designed for unbaptized people, that can get a little odd.
Yeah, and we always have to keep going back to the principle that the RCIA is not a catechetical process. It's a liturgical process that is made up of a series of rituals, a series of liturgies that are for specific persons, that are appropriate for only very specific persons, but we tend to use those rituals for everyone who's in need of an initiation sacrament. So we need to go back to that primary mindset of the rituals are appropriate for specific persons.
So imagine it this way: if we took all the married couples and we started preparing them for the rite of marriage, not a renewal of vows, but the actual rite of marriage, and they're already married, so it's somewhat similar to that. Yeah. Although in the formation process for catechumens, because that's such an effective process for making disciples, we can adapt some of what takes place in the catechumenate and apply it to some baptized people. Deciding how that happens and which baptized people, that's where, if we're really paying attention, that's where things can get a little complicated. Now, because it's complicated, we tend to just smush everybody together and treat them all the same and try to crush them into a one-size-fits-all program, and that's really not helpful to anybody. So what we want to do today is talk about who these baptized people are that we have in our processes, how we kind of sort them out and decide who's who, and then what we do with them once we have them in their different groups.
Mm-hmm. And another complication to add all of that is that oftentimes the RCIA is the only adult faith formation process happening in a parish. And that's a problem. The RCIA is not intended to fit the needs of the sacramental needs of all the adults in your parish. The parish itself must be a formation program for every single adult in the parish, and the RCIA is a specific path for specific people. So we have to rethink how we're doing faith formation for adults.
Yeah, just to build on what Diana said, we've heard of parishes where they'll put in the bulletin, or they'll announce to the Catholics, folks who are coming to Mass every Sunday that grew up Catholic, that went to Catholic school, they'll say to the Catholics, do you want to learn more about your Catholic faith? Come to the RCIA. Well, and that's just a little bit crazy making, because they are fully initiated, fully participating members of the priesthood of the faithful, and yet we're inviting them to a preparation process for folks who are unbaptized.
I mean, just imagine, again, going back to your marriage analogy. If you told all the married couples in your parish, do you want to improve your marriage? Come to the Engaged Encounter retreat, which might be great for them, but imagine all of the couples who are engaged who've never been married. They can start feeling like, well, this was supposed to be for me, and I have different questions than a couple that's been married for 20 years. So you start to see the problem that we have. So I'm going to put a link in the comments box here to a blog post that Nick wrote, and so you can follow along there or take a look at it after our video here.
All right, so we're going to be talking almost exclusively about the baptized candidates today, And what we have to do when we get some candidates, when we get some baptized people that either baptized Catholic who want to complete their sacraments of confirmation and Eucharist, or baptized in another tradition, and they want to become Catholic, we're going to have to, first of all, we're going to do three things with them. First of all, we're going to discern their level of catechesis. How well are they living the principles, the way of a Christian life? Would people be able to identify them out in the world as Christian, or are they not living a Christian life at all? So what's their level of catechesis? Then once we know that, the second thing is we have to develop a faith formation plan for them. And then that faith formation plan that we've developed will include, number 3, appropriate rituals, appropriate rites that will celebrate with them on their faith journey.
And then making sure that everyone always knows the RCIA is an actual ritual text, and so you want to make sure you're using the ritual text for your country. We're going to talk about paragraph numbers here, where the numbers are different depending on which country you're in. And so you want to make sure you're using your ritual text appropriate for you.
So in paragraph 400 in the United States and paragraph 376 in Canada or Australia, you'll find this quote. It says, "The following pastoral guidelines concern adults who were baptized as infants." So everything that follows from paragraph 400 or 376, everything that follows there applies to baptized people who were baptized as infants. Mm-hmm. Right. The following pastoral guidelines apply to adults baptized as infants, parenthesis, either as Roman Catholics or as members of another Christian community, close parenthesis. And here's the important part. But did not receive further catechetical formation, nor consequently the sacraments of confirmation and Eucharist. Mm-hmm. So all these guidelines that follow are going to be for people who are baptized as babies in Protestant tradition or Catholic tradition. And then after baptism, they got no further formation. They didn't celebrate First Communion. They didn't go to Bible camp. They didn't have vacation Bible school. They didn't go to CCD classes. They didn't go to church.
They didn't go to a Catholic school or
no
a Christian
further
school.
Formation. So absolutely uncatechized, unformed in the Christian life, although they're baptized, and that's important. Because if they're baptized, it means that they are members of the priesthood of the faithful. Even though they don't know it or didn't know it when they were kids and never lived it and don't know what that means now, they don't know how to make the sign of the cross, they don't know the Lord's Prayer, they don't know anything about the Trinity, still, they are members of the priesthood of Christ because of their baptism. It changed them forever, and that cannot be undone.
Mm-hmm. So this paragraph 400, begins the second half of the RCIA text. So let me just show you here. Right here, this thick part, that's all for unbaptized persons. This shorter part here has the rituals that are for those who are already baptized but had received no further catechetical instruction or formation. And so there's not really that much here, and we're going to go over what you'll find here. But just so you get the sense of what we're talking about here, RCIA is primarily for the unbaptized, and here's how you adapt it for those who are baptized but uncatechized.
So we've got... So it's not black. This is not a black and white designation, but it's helpful to think of like 3 different groups of baptized people, and it's really a continuum. But if you think of these as 3 groups with some overlap, this is helpful. So you have those folks baptized as infants, got no further formation, and they're completely uncatechized. They're down here at this end of the continuum, and then at the other end, you've got people who are baptized as babies. They were raised Christian, either in their Protestant tradition or Catholic tradition. They celebrated maybe some rites and some sacraments. They know the Lord's Prayer. They know some Bible stories. They know the social justice teaching of the church. They know who the Pope is. They know who the bishop is. They're living a Catholic life. They're raising their children as Catholics or Lutherans or whatever they are. They're They're actively in the world, identifiable as Christians. They're on the upper end. So we'd say they're well catechized folks, well catechized Christians.
And these are people who have not celebrated confirmation or Eucharist.
Well, maybe it depends on, let's say, a Lutheran. He may have celebrated confirmation and Eucharist in his Lutheran tradition. So we don't recognize that in the Catholic tradition. So they're going to have to celebrate that when they finally join the Catholic Church. But it's the largest point you have to keep in mind is these folks are living as Christians, they're identifiable as Christians, and they're well catechized. So those are the two extremes. Mm-hmm. Then in the middle, and this is really who we have in most of our processes, you've got folks who are a little bit catechized. Okay, so they maybe missed more of their sacraments, or they know some Bible stories, but they don't really know much about what they mean, or they can say the Lord's Prayer, but they may not know everything that they're saying when they say the Lord's Prayer, or things like that. But they know some Christian stuff, and they're doing some Christian living, some Christian practice. They're just not very good at it, or their spirituality is not very deep. So they're kind of in the middle. For the middle people and the well-catechized people, all those people would be considered at least somewhat catechized, and therefore, according to paragraph 400 or 376, they are not in the RCIA. The RCIA is for those who are totally uncatechized. Now, don't freak out. Just because I'm saying they're not in the RCIA doesn't mean we don't do anything for them. But it's just a way of thinking about what does the rite intend. The rite intends to be primarily for unbaptized people who are learning how to live as Christians, and then by way of adaptation, baptized people who have got no clue how to live as Christians, and we're also going to train them in Christian life.
And so when you're talking about the people in this end, and you said a couple times, they missed some of their sacraments. Are we talking also about, say, Catholics who haven't been confirmed?
Yeah, so it depends on where they are on the spectrum, right? So if they celebrated First Communion as a child, as a 7-year-old, they got some catechesis. Now maybe it wasn't very good or very long lasting, and they're really more toward the uncatechized end, but they're not completely uncatechized if they celebrated First Communion. Or they could be more toward the catechized end. They celebrated First Communion, they grew up Catholic, going to church every Sunday, they're still going to church every Sunday, but somehow in their teenage years or whenever you celebrate confirmation, they missed confirmation, but they're pretty much well catechized, identifiable, active Catholic. So they would be, again, we're talking about discerning the level of formation, and not just the number of facts they know about being Catholic, but how they're actually living as a Catholic in the world. Or someone look at them and say, "Oh, that's obviously a Christian," the way they're acting. That's what we're talking about. That's what I mean by well catechized. Are they living as a disciple of Jesus?
A good paragraph to use to help you gauge that level of catechesis would be paragraph 75, which lists the 4 main areas of Christian life. Those are the areas that we train catechumens, those who are unbaptized, in order to prepare them to live the Christian way of life as baptized persons. And those 4 areas are the area of discipleship in the Word, so that they live as people of the Word, they know the Word, they know the teachings that come out of the Word of God, and they are steeped in, their life is imbued with that Word. The second area of Christian discipleship is community. They know how to live as a Christian community, in Christian community. They sacrifice for others. They put others first, even if it is hard for them. They learn how to forgive. Third area is the area of discipleship in prayer and worship. So they have a lifestyle of prayer, both in their own daily life, but also with the community. And fourth is that their life of apostolic witness. So service out in the world to those most in need, in order to preach the gospel through their lives, through their words, and to build up the church.
So in this continuum, if we're talking about the two groups of catechized, so we've got folks who are barely catechized and folks who are well catechized. Between those two groups, there's a whole wide range, right? So folks will have, on those four areas that Diana talked about, word, community, worship, and witness, you're going to have folks across the spectrum who are doing better or worse at each of those. And really what this means is we're going to have to get to know each candidate and get to know specifically what their individual faith formation needs are. We can't just stuff everybody into a one-size-fits-all program. We have to discern specifically the level of formation, the kind of formation that each candidate needs. But if they're on that catechized spectrum, they're not completely uncatechized. Let's say they're from just a little bit catechized to not great catechesis, but better than a little bit to really great catechesis. There's just these levels of catechesis. We're discerning around the four areas of word, community, worship, and witness, how they're doing. What's true about all of these catechized candidates, no matter how well or how unwell they are catechized, they're going to need much, much less preparation than the catechumens or the completely uncatechized candidates. Catechized candidates are going to need less preparation, and catechized candidates do not all need to start in September or October or whenever your program begins. There's no start date for them. Whenever they show up, we can start their formation process.
Mm-hmm. And ideally, we can say the same for any kind of unbaptized person, too.
Right.
And that's a whole other
Right. We're focusing on the
here.
baptized today.
Yes. Catechized candidates do not need to belong to a single group. And so think about it again as like your married couples. They don't necessarily need to be formed and catechized all together. Sometimes it's good for them to get together every so often with other married couples for formation and things like that. But their process, their preparation really is in as they are living their vocation. And so the same with catechized, baptized persons. Their formation is how they are living in your parish community, how they are living out those four areas of Christian life. And so don't think of trying to lump all of your baptized candidates together into one group. Think of bringing them out into your community and helping them be formed through their practice of that Christian way of life.
Now, obviously, if we're not putting them all in the same group and they're not all starting at the same time, it also means they don't have to finish at the same time. And specifically, they would not finish at the Easter Vigil. The Easter Vigil is not the place to bring the catechized candidates to celebrate their sacraments. They would normally celebrate their sacraments at a Sunday liturgy. If they're Protestants coming into full communion, they would celebrate the reception of full communion to the Catholic Church. And if they're Catholics, it means they probably have already celebrated First Communion, and they're probably needing to celebrate confirmation. And that would be celebrated either when the bishop comes to your parish to confirm the teenagers, or the pastor could request delegation to celebrate a confirmation of an adult Catholic in the parish.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more specifically about the rules around confirmation, because that's a little different for each person.
Well, that's the third part, the third thing. So we've done, we've looked at
assessing their level of catechesis.
Yeah, assessing their level of catechesis. And we've looked at a little bit about the formation plan, that it's not all going to be one size fits all, and it's going to be around those four areas of word, community, worship, and service. And the third thing is choose the appropriate rites. So now we know who our candidates are. We know kind of the level of formation they're going to need, or the kind of formation they're going to need. And so the third thing is to decide what rites we're going to celebrate with them.
And here we're talking about the catechized, or somewhat catechized.
We're talking about all three groups. So we got three groups. Remember, just for sake of argument, we've got three groups of baptized candidates. We have the completely uncatechized.
Okay.
We have the somewhat catechized, and we've got the well catechized. So among all those three groups, what are the appropriate rites that we're going to celebrate with them?
Got it. So for the uncatechized candidates, these are baptized as infants and received no further catechesis. This is the people that paragraph 400 or paragraph 376 in Canada and Australia that's for whom these rituals that are in the RCIA, that's what we do.
And tell folks your lifesaver analogy.
Gosh. Okay, so I don't swim. I pretend to swim. I look good side paddling, but other than that, I don't really swim. And so I look at these rituals that are in the RCIA for the baptized, that second part right here. I look at them as lifesavers, life preservers, not lifesavers, life preservers.
Those big rings that you throw out in the water when somebody goes
man
overboard.
Exactly. In whether in the U.S. or Canada or Australia or wherever you are, these rituals are all optional. None of them are required, which is different than those for who are the rituals for the unbaptized. There are several rituals that are mandatory for the unbaptized. For the baptized, the rituals that are provided in the RCIA are all optional, and so they're like life preservers. You use them if you need them. And so for the people who don't know anything about swimming, which is not me, I know a little tiny bit, they probably want a little floater, a little, a lifesaver. And so they will probably celebrate many of the rituals, the optional rituals that are provided for them, because it will save their life. It will incorporate them even more closely to the Christian community with whom they've had no formation, no real relationship. And so these rituals are beneficial for them.
Now, for the dog paddler or someone who's, can get in the water without drowning, and get around the pool okay, for a swimmer who's not really a good swimmer, but they can stay afloat, they're not going to die in the pool. That person doesn't need a life preserver. They just need swimming lessons. They need practice. They need to get better at kind of what they already know how to do or started to know how to do. And then, of course, the expert swimmer, the person who's really good at being in the pool, they don't need much at all. They don't need a lot of instruction. They basically need to let them go swim, and maybe you comment on their form or their style or something. But really, they're doing okay. Mm-hmm. So if you imagine those three groups, the uncatechized, the medium or not too well catechized, excuse me, and the well catechized, if you imagine them as swimmers, as totally non-swimmer, going to die if they're left alone in the pool. A dog paddler who can get around the pool okay, just slow and a little painful to watch, or an expert swimmer. Who needs the rites, the life preservers that are provided in the RCIA? That's going to be the non-swimmer, the non-catechized person.
The people in the middle.
The people in the middle and the expert swimmers. There are rites for them, but they're the rites that you and I celebrate. They're the sacramentals. They're the blessings. They're the devotions. They're the stuff that Catholics already do. So that's what we're going to do for the catechized folks. But for the uncatechized folks, we have specific optional rituals in the RCIA that they can celebrate.
So, for example, if you have a Catholic who's been a Catholic all their life, has been going to communion, and for some reason missed confirmation, and so now you're helping them prepare for confirmation, you would never, ever, ever celebrate a rite of welcome for them. It's not an appropriate
It's like giving them beginner
them.
swimming lessons.
Yes, and so don't do it. But again, because of all of the systemic problems that we have in our parishes where RCI is the only faith formation process, we tend to put people like that who only need confirmation, who are very good Catholics, who are very well catechized. We put them into the RCIA, where sometimes they're the majority of people in our RCIA. And so we want to really understand what the RCIA is for and for whom it is, and so that we can celebrate the correct rituals with them.
So let's look at the rites for the uncatechized, baptized uncatechized. Again, all these are optional. And we're going to talk about these rites. They're different in each of the English-speaking countries that we usually deal with. So they're different in Canada, and in Australia there are none in the Australian text. And then in the Canadian text, there are some that are different than the ones in the U.S. So we're going to focus on the ones in the U.S., and if you're not from the U.S., you have to adjust your understanding based on what's there. But the principles are the same. So in the United States, there's first of all the rite of welcoming the candidates. And that is what?
That's the first ritual that kind of formally announces to the community that this person is entering into a period of formation to prepare them for the sacraments of confirmation and Eucharist, or to be received into the full communion of the Catholic Church.
And it has the structure of it and the sound of the prayer, the way the ritual is done. It looks and feels a lot like the rite of acceptance into the order of catechumens. And in the United States, and only in the United States, you can celebrate the rite of acceptance and the rite of welcome, the unbaptized and the baptized, together in a combined liturgy. And even though you can, we suggest not, because the rituals are so similar for both the baptized and the unbaptized. It's very, very difficult to make clear to the assembly in the short amount of time we have which of these folks are unbaptized and which are baptized, and why that matters. To the assembly, it looks like all these folks are the same, and it's about getting sacraments. And really, for the unbaptized, it's about joining Christ. And the baptized are already joined to Christ, and that's huge distinction. But the combined rites kind of blur that distinction. So if you're going to celebrate the optional rite of welcome with the baptized, uncatechized candidates, celebrate that on a different time than the rite of acceptance with the unbaptized inquirers.
Yes. And remember, this ritual, these rites that we're going to look at, are for the people on this end of the pool.
Yeah, uncatechized,
non-swimmers.
non-swimmers. Yeah.
Not at all. Okay.
All right, so the second one in the United States, the second optional rite for the uncatechized, baptized candidates is the rite of sending the candidates for recognition by the bishop and the call to continuing conversion. So probably we should skip down a little bit and say, what is the call to continuing conversion? That's the third rite available, the rite of calling the candidates to continuing conversion. So,
and the rite of calling the candidates is similar. Again, it looks very similar to the rite of election that usually takes place at the beginning of Lent. Now, the rite of calling to continuing conversion, again, is optional. And it is simply a way of reiterating to the community that these are persons who will be celebrating in the very near future, within the next several weeks or so, the sacraments of confirmation and Eucharist, or will be received into the full communion of the Catholic Church. This rite itself, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you celebrate it by itself, does not take place in the cathedral. It is primarily and foundationally a parish ritual, again, to reiterate that this is for the community to see who are the people who will be received shortly or completing their sacraments. But if you go back to what we said about not fitting everybody all into the same group and needing to start at the same time, some of your baptized, uncatechized candidates are going to get catechized over some amount of time, and they'll be ready to celebrate their sacraments or be received into full communion at a time other than when this rite is celebrated. This rite is celebrated on the first Sunday of Lent, kind of paralleling the rite of election. So you could celebrate it as a parish rite at another time, but if it's like a diocesan rite in your diocese, if it's celebrated combined with the election rite at the cathedral, you would not celebrate, and you're going to celebrate their sacraments with them, say in November. There'd be no reason to celebrate the rite of sending to the candidates for recognition by the bishop, because you're not going to send them there because they're already going to be celebrating their sacraments well before the Easter Vigil. So you see how weird it gets when we start putting everyone into the same path and the same boat, celebrating all the same things. We disregard a discernment for readiness. Yes. Right. So we can fit everybody in, get everybody finished at the same time. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes we get phone calls and email messages from baptized candidates. They're upset. Who are mad at the RCIA director of their parish because they have been told, you have to wait until Easter Vigil. But they're ready now. They feel that they've been living the Christian life. They're well catechized, and they are being told, no, because this is the way we do it, you have to wait. And all we can say is that you're right. You should be received now. And so really discern, take this to heart, because it's not about you. It's about what is best for each person in front of you.
And then the final optional rite that's available in the United States version is something called a penitential rite, parenthesis, scrutiny. And honestly, I have never celebrated this because the baptized people, first of all, they don't celebrate scrutinies. And the rite itself isn't structured like a scrutiny. I don't know why they put scrutiny in the title. And really, it is kind of a rite of reconciliation, a rite of penance in a sense. And our parishes have a rite of penance already. So you either have like regular confession on Saturdays in your parish, something like that. And then during big seasons like Advent and Lent, there'll be a parish-wide celebration of the sacrament of penance. And so I always, if I've got baptized candidates, I bring them to those parish celebrations of the rite of penance. I don't use this rite that's in the optional rite that's in the RCIA.
Yeah, and baptized candidates, catechized or uncatechized, should be preparing to celebrate reconciliation, the sacrament of penance.
Well, and actually celebrate it.
Yes. And so, but here, I mean, again, think about this. Unbaptized, those who are catechumens, do not celebrate penance. They cannot celebrate penance.
We have the scrutinies for them. That's their penitential celebration. And then the sacrament of penance is the celebration for baptized people, Protestants or Catholics.
So again, seeing how do you know which ritual is appropriate for whom?
Yeah.
And then, do you want to say something about confirmation?
Well, see, we need a whole another day on this. But the complication about confirmation is it has been, up until the 20th century, it was considered to be a sacrament of initiation, and it was celebrated before First Eucharist. Now, it wasn't always like in the Eastern Rite. It's always celebrated together. Baptism, confirmation, Eucharist. All three are always celebrated together, even with infants. In the Western Church, Rome and Europe and the United States, the rites got separated, but they were still in order. So you had baptism, and then some years later, probably about age 7, you'd have confirmation, and then some years later, probably age 10 or 12, you'd have First Communion. And mostly that's how it was done throughout the Western Church until the 20th century. And then for a lot of historical reasons that had nothing to do with the theology of the sacraments, confirmation and First Communion got reversed. And that caused a whole sort of different understanding of confirmation to grow up, about it being a sacrament of maturity. But the Catechism of the Catholic Church says very explicitly it is not a sacrament of maturity. It's not supposed to be celebrating some kind of mature faith, because all of us, when we're initiated into Christ, we have the fullness of the grace of the sacrament because of God, not because of how mature we are. It's not about our understanding or our personal growth. It's about God doing something to us. So when somebody misses confirmation, when they celebrate baptism and then Eucharist without having celebrated confirmation, when they celebrate Eucharist, they have come into the fullness of the faith. They receive the fullness of Christ. There's no extra Christ or extra Holy Spirit that's waiting for them. They get the fullness of grace in the sacrament of Eucharist. Now, confirmation is still important, and so we wind up celebrating that with teenagers or adults or whomever. But it's not really, in that sense, the completion of initiation. It's sort of catching up the sacraments. When, as Diana said before, when someone is living a full Catholic life and they miss confirmation along the way, we don't treat them as though they're being initiated into Christ. We don't treat them as though they're uncatechized. Mm-hmm. And we don't put them through some kind of process where they go through a beginner level formation. We find out how they're living the four areas of word, community, worship, and service in paragraph 75. And if they're human, if they're normal, it means there's one or more of those areas where they need some strengthening. They're doing great, but they could do better. And so where is it that we really want to strengthen? Where is it that we want to focus on, like making them better in their witness to Christ, make them better evangelists, make them better reaching out to the poor? Let's focus on that for a few weeks. And once they and we see that there's been some movement there, some growth there, we're going to say, well, let's celebrate that with confirmation. Let's have the sacrament of confirmation as a way of acknowledging God's grace already flowing and growing in this person.
Mm-hmm. And so for Catholics, the ordinary minister of confirmation is the bishop. Mm-hmm. And so you do need to either send this person who is ready for the sacrament of confirmation to the bishop. So oftentimes in dioceses that's at Pentecost or at another time during the year, a big diocesan celebration. Or for Catholics, your pastor can ask the bishop for delegation, for faculties to confirm this person in a parish celebration of confirmation on a Sunday or another appropriate time. So then you don't have to, again, make this person wait until the diocesan celebration. You can go ahead and confirm this person once you get permission.
Also, you can send, the bishop or bishops, depending on diocese, is going around to parishes usually all year long, celebrating confirmations, probably with teenagers or preteens. But any of those celebrations that I've been to, there's always an adult or two that's also getting confirmed. And so you can send if you can wait till the bishop comes to your parish, or you can send your candidate to a nearby parish where the bishop is celebrating confirmation. So really any time of the year, if your bishops are doing confirmation all year long, any time of the year they can celebrate confirmation.
It's the same rite. There's no separate rite for teenagers and one for not teenagers. Mm-hmm. It's all the rite of confirmation. So don't divide that up. And then the second thing about the confirmation for those who are baptized in another Christian tradition, those who are going to be received into the full communion of the Catholic Church, that ritual includes confirmation. It's required. It's part of the rite of reception. And that rite of reception gives the presider, whether it's a bishop or your pastor, your priest, gives them automatic permission to celebrate confirmation. So I know it's all weird. So just remember this. If you're dealing with a Catholic, you need permission from the bishop to confirm. If you're dealing with a Christian from another tradition, you do not need permission from your bishop to confirm that person, as long as you are celebrating the rite of reception into the full communion of the Catholic Church.
And people tend to get confused about it. Why would it be sort of easier for a Protestant than a Catholic? And the reason is the rite of reception into the full communion of the Catholic Church comes out of the ecumenical movement, which was a lot stronger in the 1950s and 60s than it is today. But part of that movement was about, we don't want to put any barriers in front of folks who want to be received into full communion. We don't want to make them wait. We don't want to have any delay. We want to make it as easy as possible for them to be received into full communion. And so it was decided that if a priest has the faculties to celebrate this rite of reception, he automatically has the faculties to confirm.
And that rite of reception can be celebrated any time of year, basically any day.
Yeah.
So you do not have to wait until Easter Vigil, until next year to do this, if you have a person who's ready now.
So if you've just been totally geeking out on this and loving it and you want to get a lot more, we're going to do a lot more next week. We're going to have a community chat. We're going to spend about an hour talking about the rites for the baptized and how, we'll do an expanded version of what we just did here. And
Oh, and there's graphics.
yes, there'll be slides, and Diana's been working really hard on them. That she has pictures of the life preservers, and so you should come and watch. And the community chat is free, but you need to sign up. So there's a link there in the comments where you can sign up and then join us next Thursday.
Yes,
Thursday. Not 2 days from now, but a week and a couple days from now. It's November, what is it?
12.
November 12 at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And then you can get a lot more of what we started on today. You're going to know more. Oh my God.
I know. So, and I don't know if we're going to talk about pandemia during that time, but again, all of these ritual celebration things, all weird in pandemic time, but the principles remain the same.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you, friends. Again, nothing big happening in the United States today, but keep praying for us, and we will keep praying for you.
All right, everyone. Take care. God bless.
Thanks. Bye.